Right, in today's video, because we're getting really close to spring now, well, we are in spring, but really close to getting the renovations underway here. And look, people who live in Queensland can start earlier, but I really strongly suggest that anybody who's south of Queensland, so New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, just hold out till the first, at least the first weekend in October. Look, it's not a race. We don't want to go too early because there's still chance of frost. There's still these sorts of things. So look, just hold out if you can. If you've done it, so be it. I've done it early in the past too, but ideally, October's a great time to renovate south of Queensland. Anyway, on with this. Today, it's time to do some soil testing. Now, I've never actually had professional testing done here before. It's something that I've always talked about doing, and I've talked and never got around to it. But today, we're going to do it. Now, I didn't actually realise myself till recently that Turf Finder, which is a great website for looking at all the different grass types. I'm sure most of you guys have actually been to their site once or twice to look at different varieties of grass, and they've got them all listed. They've got the listed who's got it, roughly what it costs, a great description about each one. But what I didn't know is these guys actually offer soil testing too. So today we're going to use those guys to do the soil testing here on this green and on my front lawn. So I'm not worried about the buffalo. It's not a real highly maintained area. It's not an intensively maintained area. It's not a shortcut. It is pretty much just a set and forget kind of area. But today, as I said, we're going to do our soil testing. Now, why would you do soil testing? Now, number one, it can tell you a lot of things. It can answer why you're struggling to get areas to grow. It can answer that in the way maybe your pH is not quite right. So if your pH is too acidic, so too low, or if it's too high, ideally couch grasses and things like that like to just be on the acid side of alkaline. So sort of in that mid to high sixes. Whereas here for me now, when I do I guess what you call a powder chemical test here, I'm sort of hovering just above 7. So I do want to just confirm that with a professional laboratory test. Other things that it's going to show us is our macronutrients. So they, for example, our nitrogen levels, our phosphorus levels, our potassium levels. Other macronutrients also include having a mental blank here, magnesium, and then our minor nutrients, or our our micronutrients are things like boron, zinc, iron, and manganese. So we're going to get answers to that. It's also going to test, the other thing in the soil tests we're going to get results on today is our salt levels in our soil. So that'll also be another interesting test. Now, a few things to consider when doing this. The first thing you need to consider is if you've recently fertilized, it's probably going to give you some false readings. Now, about 3 weeks ago, I did actually do an application on this lawn with a NutriFeed liquid fertilizer. I did actually talk to the guys at Turf Finder about that, and they assured me because it was a liquid application, not a granular that goes into the soil, so to speak, give it a couple of weeks, it'll be fine. Now, if you use a fast release granule fertilizer, I would also hang out a few weeks. But if you've used a slow release, that could also have a result. So just if you put fertilizer down, just hold out for a while before doing a test, just to give you the most accurate representation. Now, the guys want me to take 10 to 15 samples on each lawn. So we'll take 10 from the green, we'll take 10 from the front. Now, that sort of took me a bit by surprise because I didn't expect to be that much. Otherwise, I would have just gone with the Pro Plugger. But because they wanted so many, I've actually gone and got myself, now inside this little canister is a really cool little gadget, a soil probe. Now what it does is it's much smaller than a Pro Plugger, and this is ideal for taking core samples. It's about, I think it's 19 mils, or it might be 20 mils. Comes with a little bit there, so you just basically stick him down. We need to get a 4-inch depth. Okay, so the soil sample's 4 inches down, and then we're going to stick each of them. So we're going to stick all the green in a Ziploc bag. We're going to put the label it, green, collection date, etc. And then we'll do the same with the front. So they wanted at least 500 grams of each. So yeah, so let's take some samples. So when we take these core samples now, we want to make sure we get a great broad area. So we want to look for areas that may be struggling a little bit. We want to look for areas that are good. We want to get a good mix. Don't just take all your samples from your best spot or all your samples from your worst spot. We want an average. So we just want to go over the whole thing, and that'll give us the best sort of prognosis, and we can go forward on that. We can tailor different fertilizers. So if we're low in, for example, potassium, we can look at increasing our potassium-based fertilizers. If we're low in phosphorus, we can do the same. If we're high in nitrogen, we can cut it back. So it gives you a great, I guess, script, if you will, to have a really great healthy lawn. We can also adjust pH if that's not quite right, because often it might not be the fertilizer you're putting on, it might be the fact that that fertilizer is not available to the plant, or the grass in this case, simply because, hey, it's just locked out because of the pH level. Righto, so that's our first one there, and we can see sand, there's a little clay barrier about there, and then we go back to sand. So that'd be a bit of top dressing. That probably could have even been when this turf was laid. That could be a bit of the soil from the turf. Yeah, so anyway, so we'll repeat that another 14 times around the place, and then we'll move out the front. Taking 16 samples all up on this area. I've got to be honest, this little tool is really, really impressive. I actually got this from TURFMATE, so not Turf Finder, but TURFMATE. I'll put a link in the description. Actually, I'll put it on the bottom of the screen now if you're looking for something like this. If you're likely to be doing soil testing or just want to take core samples, this here is actually really, really, really good. It was packaged beautifully. Comes in a square tube case there, which I wasn't expecting. And we've got the little rod here, which basically doubles as a turning handle, like so. And also you can actually use it to push any core samples through that get stuck, and obviously it all stores away together nicely in the little square tube when not in use. Let's check. So we're aiming for 500 grams. We'll just check this now, see if that's about right. So as you can see, if you had to take 15 core samples with a Pro Plugger, you'd have a lot more soil than what's here in this bag. So something like that might be worth adding to your garden shed. Right, let's chuck it on some scales to be sure. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but you'll have to take my word for it. Right, yeah, so we'll stick him on here. So 661 grams, and that includes the bag. I think I can change this to imperial too. Let me see. So what's that? 23.2 ounces. That might, I don't know, make sense to the American viewers. So yeah, there you go. That's what we'll do. That's that bag. We'll seal it off. We'll go around the front. Okay, so it's been a couple of weeks now. I sent the tests off. It was the 22nd of September, and today, I don't know what today is. Today might be the 6th. No, I don't know, but I got the results back on the 4th, and I've got them here now. So a few surprises in it, actually. A few surprises. You'll remember back in a previous episode that we touched on, or sorry, that we did on the spring dead spot. I talked about I think I had low phosphorus and I think I had low potassium. Well, turns out I couldn't be any more wrong if I tried. My phosphorus, and I'll put these results on the screen, the phosphorus was actually in the red. It was off the charts. So I don't really know how that's come to be. That one's got me a little bit stumped. And the other thing is the potassium levels are also very high. Well, they're on the high scale. They're not very high. High is probably fair to say, but not very high. So they're fine, but the phosphorus for some reason is off the charts. Now, as I suspected, this putting green has got a pH issue. It is actually, the pH is too high. So the pH on the putting green is 7.4. I would ideally like to see that back at 6.4. So we're going to bring that down a whole unit. And the front yard was right on the borderline. So the front lawn was sitting neutrally right right at 7, being an alkali, or neutral, anything above 7 is obviously alkaline, anything beneath 7 becomes acidic. So I want to bring it back down into the 6s as well. And we'll do that using a couple of things. I'm going to use sulfate of ammonia, and we're also going to use a product that I'm going to use through the Easy Flow called anti-alkaline or anti-alk. So that'll help just to reduce the pH, and we'll do this test again in 12 months. So we'll start to get a baseline of how we're traveling. But I've had to change now. I've had to sort of change my approach to my renovations that I'm going to start very soon. I was going to use a fertilizer post-renovation, or during the renovation I should say, called nitrophosphate. But I'm actually now going to change that to something that has got has got 0 or next to 0 when it comes to the phosphorus, because I don't want to add any phosphorus to this ground. It needs to now calm down. It needs to sort of I guess deplete itself through the soil, and that will take a little bit of time because it is very slow to travel through the soil. So I'll put these up on the screen if I haven't already done it. These are really good. The people at Turf Finder have done a fantastic job because they break it all down. I've seen some soil tests in the past that people have sent me, and they're really confusing to understand, even for me. And look, to be totally upfront and transparent, soil tests are sort of not my strong point anyway. There's a little bit of reading and stuff into this, but these guys have made it fairly clear. So basically, once again, traffic light sort of program, green, orange, red and yellow. And then when you turn the page, gives you very detailed information in fairly much layman's terms, talks about your particular situation and what needs to happen. And down the bottom here, they talk about what your actual fertilizer requirements are. So you can tailor a product. So you can go, I need something with more nitrogen. So I actually do. I need something with more nitrogen. So I'm going to use a high nitrogen fertilizer because my levels were extremely low. But once again, as I said, my phosphorus is very high. Potassium was also on the border of being, on the upper level. So don't need to worry too much about adding that. So really for me, what I've got to take out of this for my soil, for this putting green particularly, and last year this was a bit average. What'll happen is now this green will become, it'll get a lot more nitrogen, it'll get a treatment of anti-alk, it'll also get some sulfate of ammonia. So, and that should start to help this thing recover. As I said, it was looking pretty sad last year, and now we've got some real firm answers to go with. So I can't recommend getting a soil test done enough because it's opened my eyes up, because if I had chosen to ignore soil tests and not get them done, I would have just gone and put a heap more potassium and phosphorus out on that lawn and wondered why things weren't happening. So instead of guessing, always best just to get one of these done. Once again, I'll put the links up on the screen. And as I said, we're rolling into renovations very soon. I'm going to hopefully start doing them this weekend. And then obviously that video will follow through. Anyway, guys, look, have a fantastic weekend. Hope you've enjoyed today's episode. It was probably a little bit more technical, a bit more wordy, but that's how that's going to go sometimes. So thanks for sticking around if you've lasted this long. Have a great weekend. We'll see you here next time on the Aussie Lawn.